Hello and welcome to the Jesus Witch podcast. I'm your host, Lena Elsaya Lee, also known as Lena the Jesus Witch on TikTok and Instagram. The Jesus Witch podcast is a show dedicated to opening the conversation about including Jesus in witchery practices. The goal of this podcast is to not be evangelical. The goal is to spread the love, light, truth, acceptance, and oneness that is Jesus Christ himself. Here at the Jesus Witch podcast, we believe all people are loved by God and all people are loved by Jesus. We believe in community and the power of fellowship. We believe in giving whatever you reasonably can to help your neighbor who's in need. And above all, we believe in the power of creating a relationship with Jesus that is authentic and unique to you. Join me for new episodes of the Jesus Witch podcast every single Monday, and be sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting app. So this week on the Jesus Witch podcast, we are doing another episode of the Deconstruction Diaries with somebody, if you're in the Jesus Witch church, you will already know them. But Charlie, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey guys. I'm Charlie. If you don't know me, I am the other half of the brain cell. Um,
This is true.
yeah. In the Discord, I'm the local IT guy. I do a lot of behind the scenes work, both with the podcast and other social media that Lena has, and the Discord itself. I'm probably always lurking, so if you ever have questions or comments or concerns, please just let me know. I'll see them.
Yes. Charlie's like, who knows how all of this stuff works? Like, I don't know what technology is. I half know how to press record, and that's about it. And then Charlie does like all the, things I can't, the half of the brain cell that I was gifted in life does not understand. So that's basically that. So today we're going to talk about Charlie's story with Deconstruction, what brought them to the witchy world. So let's go off of that. So like, what's your history with religion and with like Christianity specifically?
So I was born and raised into a Southern Baptist church. And I say that because up until the age of probably, until I started kindergarten, I was in church at least twice, three times a week for like days, like full days, because my mom, she would cook for the church and she would run the first church we went to had a um like a clothes closet slash like storage, not storage, but like food closet and stuff like that for people who needed it. And so like she took care of all of that. And so I was brought up in the church, like physically in the church. Um, and then as I got older, we switched churches because there was drama, as there is inside, churches, unfortunately. And we went to another, I think they were Baptist. I don't know if I would classify them as Southern Baptist, but we were in rural Florida. So take that as you will. And we were there till I guess I was in middle school. I wasn't as active in that church. Well, my mom wasn't as active in that church, so ultimately I wasn't as active. And I was getting older, and you know, even then I kind of knew I didn't want anything to do with church. And finally, there was more drama there, and we just stopped going altogether. Like, my older sister, for those who don't know, is in a wheelchair, and there was a lot of issues there with how people viewed her, and people like the youth groups in particular, not putting their best foot forward in terms of you know accounting for her as a member of the church. So basically, we stopped going, and probably for a couple years, just until about I started high school, I didn't go to church. So good 3, 4 years. And then I was in a really dark spot in my life. And I went back to church because that's kind of what I knew. And I'd kind of been drawn back, like, because of that state. And I tried to couple different churches, ended up going to a Church of God. Um, in in my town, the town where I grew up, we'd kind of moved just so it was a bit of a distance, but it was worth going because it was people I knew. And um, so basically, going off of that, I was part of their youth group, and my mom started going back to church with me. My sister was already off at college, so it was just me and my mom because my dad works nights and just never was home to go in the mornings. And that's where I had one of my first, like, okay, I don't know if I believe this, moments, which I do not fault this person for what was said to me. She's a couple years older than me, probably at the time was maybe college or just out of college, so she was a young adult. And she was one of the youth group mentors. And she basically said to me, like, because I was dealing with self-harm, I was dealing with a lot of depression. And what was said to me was that I couldn't keep asking for forgiveness for the same thing because it was just not the way to do it. And I was like, I am literally struggling here with, at the time, I didn't view it this way, but looking back, it was an addiction. And like, that takes effort and it takes time to get over and get past. And I still kept going, but I was kind of disillusioned at that point where I was like, I mean, I still try to believe this. I still believe the concepts, but I don't know. And then we moved again because that's the story of my life. We moved probably, I think that was the second or third time at that point in my life. So we ended up someplace where I didn't know anybody. I didn't know people. I didn't have a community. Middle of nowhere. Like, the church we found to go to was a almost one room church. Like, the sanctuary took up 90% of the building. There was a couple back offices and that was it. Um, and then they had a separate fellowship hall that was not much bigger. And it was another Pentecostal church. It was an Assembly of God. Because that's, at that point, it's kind of what I'd come to know and kind of recognize as like the way I wanted to view things. And those people they weren't bad. They weren't great, as kind of tends to be the thing with churches, as I found. And I tried. This was around the time that I was finally getting my GED. I tried going to high school again at that point, but that didn't finish out. So I took my GED. And around that time, I was also dealing with like gender. Like, I knew for a long time that I wasn't straight. I found out in a church, kind of on accident, that I was polyamorous. Uh, that was an interesting discovery in high school. Um,
The best part about that, I mean, like, yeah, in high school, but the best part about that is it was in a church.
yes,
So,
yes, because my best friend at the time and I were dating, and
mm,
we met at church because that's where we could see each other without like
yeah,
having to organize meeting up. And he was like, I kind of like this girl, like, is that okay? And I'm like, sure. And like, we vague dated for like a while after that. So yeah, I mean, my life has led some interesting turns in that department with churches.
churches.
Considering what I do now, right?
Yeah, right.
Um, I told that to somebody once, and they're like, "You're such a badass." I'm like, "I know." No, I didn't say that, but like, I mean, maybe. Um, but so going back to, I was dealing with my gender and like trying to establish what that meant for me, which in the beginning was very loose. I was, I still to an extent identify as genderqueer or gender fluid, but like back then I was still kind of going by any pronouns. I was trying to feel out the waters. And then even as I like adjusted to he, they, like they would not like get with that. And that changed a little going like after I had basically when I went to college, and that was the split from the church for me. My mom still went, because that was her community and that was what she had. She put what time and energy she had into this church. And so in college, I tried looking for groups that were, queer friendly. It didn't happen. There was a couple on campus, but they said they were, but they weren't.
Yeah.
And
I remember
so
that period of time because I'm pretty sure that was the period of time you and I met. Charlie and I have known each other, what, like 5 years now?
something like
It's
that,
been a,
yeah.
it's been a,
It's been a hot
yeah.
minute, yeah.
It's got to be 5 years because Scott's gonna be 4 this year.
Yeah.
Shit, man, that's a long time. Anyway, but I remember that because like I was more like looking around for like queer friendly churches, just like specific like denominations, just because that's when I was getting really big into my cult, and I was just curious as to like all the denominations. Honestly, Scout too.
Yes.
So I had to know for her. Charlie's my writing partner. I've talked about
Yes.
this vaguely on here. So like we were looking for Scout, and then I kind of realized at that point, I'm like, there's nothing out there. There's very vaguely, and that was like when, what you call 2017. So
Something like that,
yeah,
yeah.
so that's like still like you would feel like far enough up. And I'm looking in New York, right? And
Yeah.
if there's not a lot in New York,
Yeah.
just I mean, now that there's definitely a lot more resources.
Oh, for sure.
There's definitely like been like a rise, especially because there's like podcasts and media like specifically made for queer Christians and devotionals and stuff. So there's definitely in the past couple of years been an uptick, but at that
I
time,
definitely think I definitely think COVID had a lot to do with that,
yeah.
honestly. Like as bad as that was, that period of time, it came out with a lot of good for connecting with people
Hmm.
that I don't think would have happened otherwise.
No, I
Or
agree.
it might have, but not as fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, so back then I found like, and mind you, I am whiter than Wonder Bread, and I think the only group that I found that was like vaguely okay was a very all black group, and I just felt awkward for different reasons. I'm like, y'all are great. I can't. Like, I think I went to one thing or one or two things and was like, I want to, but I can't. Like it was yikes. And that was kind of when I finally broke away from religion. I didn't know what I believed then, but that was definitely like where that broke for me of like, there's nothing here for me. Not for who I am, not for how I am. And like back in that period, and it just came across my Facebook memories. I made like this note on Facebook back when, I had nowhere else to write where people would see. Um, that like this whole thing about like is being gender queer, gender fluid, does that have anything to do with my walk with Christ? And at the time I said no, because ultimately I don't think it does. But also looking back, none of like, I mean, I think deep down I knew that I wasn't ever, not necessarily welcomed in the church, but I wasn't ever comfortable. Didn't matter what church I was in, I was never fully comfortable there. And now I'm like, oh, that's why.
Yeah, which makes sense and like segues nicely like into, well, I mean, like it doesn't necessarily segue nicely into this third question, but we could kind of like swap the two so it makes more sense.
I mean, we
Um,
could.
yeah. So like obviously like the church didn't feel right for you, and you're alluding to like now you know why it doesn't feel right for you, but like why is the answer to that? Like what does your faith look like now, and like why do you feel like you never necessarily were 100% comfortable?
So you and I have talked a lot about this, but probably a lot of people probably don't know is that I, at this point in my life, do not work with the Abrahamic pantheon. I acknowledge Jesus. I acknowledge that the Abrahamic God exists, that pantheon exists, that these people exist. people, deities, whatever you want to call them, exist.
Mm-hmm. Now, a quick break from this week's episode of the Jesus Witch podcast to talk about a few ways you can help support the show. One way you can help support the creation of the Jesus Witch podcast is to become a supporter of us on Patreon. On our Patreon, there are 4 different tiers that you could choose from, and they're all named after tarot cards. We have the Fool, the Magician, the Hierophant, and the High Priestess. In the Fool tier, you get early ad-free episodes of the Jesus Witch podcast, extended show note pages when available, Christian tarot grimoire pages, and access to our monthly community oracle reading. In the Hierophant tier, you get everything from the Fool tier, tarot spreads to help your connection with Christ, Spirit, your higher self. I also like to put out new tarot spreads for each full moon or new moon, wheel of the year, holiday, and zodiac sign. In the Magician tier, you also get 1 Bible-based spell grimoire page each month. This teaches you how to incorporate the Bible into your own spell practice. In the Hierophant tier, you get everything from the Fool and the Magician tiers, as well as a Happy Mail package from me every single month with the ingredients to make a spell, as well as an extra Bible-based spell page for your grimoire. And then you get access to our spellcasting Zoom each month where we do the spell that I sent you together. In the High Priestess tier, you get everything from the Magician, Fool, and Hierophant tiers, as well as an extra Bible-based spell from the Sun and Moon Oily Co. in your Happy Mail package each month, and a one-on-one Zoom call with me every single month to discuss your practice, how you're growing, and any suggestions that I could give to you to help you on your path. Patreon tiers start at $6.66 per month, and you can find the link to that in the show notes page. Another way you can help support the show is by shopping at my Etsy shop, the Sun and Moon Oily Co. Over on the Sun and Moon Oily Co., I offer Bible-based spell oils, ritual bath salts, Jesus Witch or Christian Witch specific mystery boxes, and custom spell oils. Over on my Etsy shop is where you can also book different types of readings with me. I offer tarot readings for your inner child, channel messages from Jesus or from Lilith. I also have a listing for general tarot readings. You could grab a soul contract reading between yourself and another person, or yourself and a deity that you're working with or curious to work with, or even grab an astrology reading for yourself or an astrology reading for your kiddos to help you parent them better and more effectively. There's also Jesus Witch merch on my Etsy shop and so many other things that I am planning on adding to my shop. So head over to the Sun and Moon Oily Co. to check that out. Another thing you can do to support the growth of the Jesus Witch podcast is join our Discord community. The Jesus Witch Church is our free 18-plus Discord community where we host Jesus Witch church services and moon circles. This is your place to ask all Jesus Witch or witchy questions in general and make some really awesome friends. You can find the link to our church in the show notes page. Another free way you could support the Jesus Witch podcast is by sharing this show with a friend and rating it on whatever podcasting app you're using with 5 stars. Leaving us a nice review really helps get the word out about the show, and don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting app. Another thing you could do to help the creation of the show is send a donation to the Jesus Witch podcast via Cash App or PayPal. It takes a lot of time and effort for me to create the Jesus Witch podcast, and getting donations helps me get the support and help that I need to be able to create this type of content for you. Donations also help keep this podcast free to everybody, so if you love this show and the information that's being put out there, please consider sending a donation to my PayPal or my Cash App. The username on both is the Jesus Witch Podcast, but the link for both of those can be found in the show notes page. And the final way that you could help support the creation of the Jesus Witch Podcast is by sending me a gift. In the show notes page, I have the link to my Amazon wish list. Everything that I put on this wish list was put there to help create content for you. Simply put, buying things off of this Amazon wish list helps me so that I don't have to purchase them myself, so I can put more of my resources in towards making the Jesus Witch podcast. If you would like to support the Jesus Witch podcast by buying me a gift or in any other way, you could find all the links to everything mentioned in this ad in the show notes page. Now let's get back to the show.
But I am not currently drawn to work with any of them. I mean, Lilith pops in every now and again to smack me upside the head, but I think that might just be a product of the people, that I'm close to at this point. Because she didn't ever like come forward. She came into my space, but I don't think she's here for me in the sense of like she's just here to be like, hey, this is kind of course, I'd almost say course correcting in that, like, take what you have now and like keep going or like stop being an idiot.
Yeah.
Though I will say Odin does a great job of that. He does a great job of that. So I work with Odin, Hestia, and Dionysus at current. Um, which the fact that I've got Odin's candle burning again is surprising. Um, after it caved in the other day. Um, but so now, I will like I was anointing myself with oil earlier going into this, and I still, you know, I haven't done it in a little bit because of just the way my life has been. But I do certain things to honor my deities in oil.
Hmm.
So I do mark the back of my neck with a cross. Like that's in Protected by Self-Love. That is one that like that is just something I have to do. Um and I think there's kind of this point of like I may get to a point where I work with Jesus. I may not. It may just be something where I honor him and like where his role in my journey here, like
Hmm.
what his role was. But that may be
Yeah.
the end of it.
And like working with him could almost be like ancestor work for you because of your mother's relationship with the church and with Christ.
Yes.
Like honestly.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like I definitely know that like Hestia is very well for me, my gods kind of fall into mother, father, crazy uncle.
Yeah.
That is the role they kind of take in my life of where Hestia is very much that motherly figure. Um, it's a lot of what I call my house husband, a lot of my house husband duties, even though I am single as they come. Uh, but you have to have goals,
Well,
right?
technically you have four spouses, so
Yeah. That's for those who don't know. Yeah. Uh, somehow I've ended up in vague relationships with four other people. And three of the four of them are already married people.
two of
Uh,
them are married to each other.
yes. I am the semi-unofficial third to Lena and her husband's relationship.
Let's be so honest. I probably would have killed Jack if I by then now if I couldn't go back to being.
I mean, listen.
Let's be real. Pray for that man. Anyway.
Yeah, no, seriously. Um, but so a lot of like the housework and stuff I dedicate to her, maybe not necessarily consciously, but um, I do it like that's kind of my thing. If I'm cooking, if I'm cleaning, if I'm doing anything like that, it is dedicated to her. A lot of my home comforts and like healing from like a lot of trauma in my past related to the home that has been exasperated recently.
Saturn and Pisces.
Well,
Yay.
welcome to Saturn return and everything getting turned on its head. Um,
Mine is
but
next. I'm not looking forward to that.
no, no, I can't imagine you are. Um, but so that's a lot of my home duties and like healing kind of the relationship with my mother that I didn't get to heal because of when and how she passed and the circumstances that was our relationship at that time. Um, and then Odin stepped in obnoxiously, and I still missed it. Oh my gosh. If no one has heard this story, I basically ignored Odin for like a month because I didn't realize it was him. Because despite the signs being obvious, I'm just dense. Uh, I would pull tarot cards before I would go to bowling because that was like the one time a week I left my house basically. And for like a week or something, maybe longer, I had the magician just sat on top of my computer.
Oh wow.
Didn't think anything of it. Sometime in that following week or something, or the period following that, I had a dream that was like a combination, and all it was someone taking off their hood and it revealing like an older one-eyed man. And
Oh
I'm
wow.
like in the dream, the only thing I like acknowledge outside of that was this is the All Father, this is Odin.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that dream was, and I still didn't do anything about it because I don't know. I'm just dense, apparently. Um, and then after that, I don't remember what I was doing, but I ended up like realizing, wait, maybe that was Odin. And so I started doing research and I came across a podcast, the name of which I cannot remember for the life of me. They had a podcast episode on Odin, and one of his names was the magician. That they called him the magician. And I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
oh, okay, so yeah,
Oh,
that's he was obnoxious
that's,
for a while until I figured it out. And for me, a lot of that is focusing on like myself and like getting myself put together, which,
hmm
that was kind of the, turning point, so to speak, with me and you in terms of the podcast, because I was like, hey, let me start doing this stuff for you. If you
yeah.
if you guys don't know, I do the transcripts for the podcast. So if you're part of the Mercury tier or higher on Patreon, you get access to those, including all of my offhanded comments
Yes.
in the footnotes, which people
Yes.
seem to love.
They're
Um,
my favorite. I like watch as you do them in real time. It makes me so happy.
um,
Whatchamacallit. And then Charlie also like organizes the Patreon and does like all the things that like I just cannot.
yeah. If you weren't in the Discord before I joined, it, it was
You're
a
welcome.
mess.
It was
It,
bad.
it was a mess. So I
It was
came
just a bunch
in
of things.
and was like, okay, we're changing this.
I mean, like fucking look at our Discord. It's just like boo, boo, boo. It's yeah.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
I very much like my things organized. Um, but so it was me being like, okay, I want to do this, 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 and this, and like basically setting up for my Saturn return to come through.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his role in kind of preparing me to move forward. And I don't think I knew it at the time that I would possibly lose my father as a figure in my life at that time, but as of recent events, I kind of have. But I have Odin, and he's stuck with me for this whole thing, which has been really comforting. And then Dionysus, as I call him Dio, which, like, if you've ever seen me type it in the Discord, it is said that way.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stop calling him that, and he hasn't basically told me to stop otherwise. So
It works
we're
for
good.
me because I literally cannot spell Dionysus. So
But he stepped in kind of, I think he'd been lurking not quite as long as Hestia had, because Hestia found me back, oh gosh, whenever I started Adeline as a character is
oh,
roughly
that's a
when
long
Hestia
time ago.
popped up. Yeah, I mean, it's longer than I've known you.
Yeah.
I've had Adeline. So that's when Hestia started popping up, and we'll get more into that as we kind of move forward. But Dionysus probably popped up a like the year before, like in 2020, and I didn't realize it. And then he kind of like waited. I think he waited it out, maybe not 2020, but like slightly before or just after I joined the church,
Mm-hmm.
the Discord. I think it's probably when he started popping up, and then kind of from that, um, he became more prominent and a little more loud. And for me, he's kind of my reminder to be like, take time for yourself, and like I think eventually we'll get to working through the religious trauma.
Yeah.
We'll get there, but like I've got so much other trauma to work through first. He's just there to remind me that it's okay to like take time and like have fun and like I'm still in my 20s. Kind of that reminder that like yes, you're getting your shit together,
Well,
but
even
don't go.
now, like apparently your 30s are your new 20s. So
Yeah, no. I mean, especially when you're queer and don't come out till you're in your, late teens, early 20s, as is. But So he's definitely kind of my hype man, so to speak. And which is great, you know. You need one, but it is definitely a change. And like slowly coming out of that closet is currently a very interesting experience because I forgot to tell my sister. And
I was in a witchcraft closet, like that
yeah,
one. Yeah.
yeah, that one.
Ooh.
I forgot to tell my sister. I talked about it with my brother-in-law, and that he didn't tell her. You know, he's not the type. But I was talking with a family friend, and basically, I had brought it up, you know, that I wasn't Christian anymore, that I had different beliefs, and apparently they had told my sister, which like I don't mind, but it was just like we still haven't had that conversation either. So we haven't actually talked about that, her and I, but it's kind of just been this, well, that's what it is kind of situation. And like, um, but it's definitely, I feel more at home in it, like, which is strange to me. But at the same time, I come from Swedish background, so like working with Odin makes so much sense to me. And like I pulling runes makes infinitely more sense to me than pulling
I was
tarot cards.
literally about to say, you with runes kind of proves that like you're supposed to be working with Norse deities.
Hmm.
Like
And
straight
like
up.
I mean, you should see the poll that I did as we were getting started because it's fantastic. Um, but yeah, so you know, at this point in my life, I'm like, okay, so this is where I'm at. You know, if more deities come in, more deities come in. If not, I'm happy with my three and kind of just moving forward and figuring out what works there and like continuing this path of, okay, so now that I'm here, what do I do next?
So I'm curious, like we learned a little bit more about like what your faith looks like now and like your history, but what did your deconstruction journey look like? And were like there specific resources that helped you out or like specific things that helped you get to the point where you are now?
So for me, deconstruction was a lot of solo work in that like I had to start recognizing patterns in my writing because for anyone who knows me, and Lena and I vaguely talked about this about, you know, writing together, but I work out a lot of what's going on in my life through my characters and through these, you know, people that exist somewhere in my brain, um, which is a whole different story. But looking back, I have characters, and a lot of them started changing in terms of like what they believed. And and I've noticed looking back at them that they changed faiths as I did. Because for a long time, they were either Christian, that were struggling to be Christian. There was a period of like agnostic, you know, not quite atheist, but like definitely not Christian beliefs. And then the pagans started popping up over and over and over again. And the first of those was, of course, Adeline, who is a sweet little bean who deserves the world. But she wasn't at that point in time, and I don't even think now, had a deity that she worked with or anything like that. But I was getting posts about Hestia over and over again with her. And I didn't really clock it then at all, you know, because I was still in that process of not really knowing what I believed and didn't think to look outside, Christianity and your big three. So, because I knew the other two didn't call to me, so I was like, I don't know how to move past this, so to speak. And then I don't know if I joined the church before or after I created Franny, but I think I created Franny and like started working with figuring out what she believes and who she works with first. And then I joined the church And because on a whim, because Lena and I had, we'd lost contact during COVID and all of that, just because we were both on two wildly different life paths at that point. Um, and I had randomly checked Lena's social media. I think I checked her Instagram and like saw what had changed on it, and I was like, okay. And so I listened to an episode or two of the podcast and then joined the Discord, and it's kind of all history from there, so to speak. Because what happened was I started realizing, okay, like this is what this is. Like Hestia has literally been reaching out to me for years, and she was my first kind of foray into the idea of not working solely with the Abrahamic Pantheon. And then Lilith popped up, and I think Lilith popping up was part of me realizing that I wasn't going to be working with Jesus. Because originally I had this belief that like Hestia was just there to move me towards working with Jesus again, or really at all. Because looking back, there was no relationship there. You want to say that there was, but there wasn't. That wasn't who I was. And what I find interesting is looking back. My mom and I had this conversation when I was 19 or so about, I think it was about the time that I came out. We had this conversation about if I still believed in God, like the Abrahamic God. And I think even then I was kind of like, yes, but no. And I didn't really want to tell her that because, again, she was very big in the church. And so, like, for me, it's like, okay, like, this has been building for a really long time. And I think Lilith coming and going was like, okay, so, like, Hestia is here. Hestia is staying, you know. And the more the church has evolved, the more I've realized that I don't have to. Like, I don't have to work with the Abrahamic Pantheon. And I don't, like, I can honor these things and their place in my life, but I don't have to keep them. And so, like, that was a big thing for me of realizing, I don't need to, like, go towards the same path that I thought I was on. Like, that's not the path I was actually on. It was the one I was, like, pretending to walk because that's what I believed I had to. And so it was a lot of realizing and letting go of these mentalities of, you know, I have to believe this and I have to be this kind of way. And honestly, like, I don't think there was ever like one resource that was like, yes, this is like something that's good. It was honestly just the Discord and the church and like, you know, being able to like see other people going through such similar but different things and realizing that, you know, that it was okay. Because a lot of my mentality has always been, well, it's the mentality, it's the depression mentality really of I'm the only one who feels like this. And having that open resource of people, of community, which I longed for, I think more than anything with churches, is like that's why I was there. It's that mentality of like I was looking for communities because I was a loner. I was someone who, and I think I was more there because I wanted that community and I wanted to fit in. And so like my brain was like, well, this is what they believe. This is what you've been led to believe. Do it. And then now I'm just like, no, that is not ever who I was.
Yeah.
In a sense of like beliefs. I wanted to believe it and I did like I remember being oh gosh, I was elementary school age, middle school, something like that, and getting quote unquote saved. And looking back, I wasn't doing it because I felt something. I
Mm-hmm.
was doing it because it felt like it was required of me. Because like at that point, both of my parents were active members of the church. So it had to have been prior to the fourth grade. So
Oh, yeah.
I was I was
Young.
elementary school age, yeah. But my dad, because my dad worked with the youth group,
Hmm.
and he didn't do that after he started working for Disney. So that's how young I was. Of like it wasn't I feel something, it was I this is what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
This is what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing and supposed to be feeling. And a lot of like my church experiences are that this kind of wanting to fit in and doing what I feel is what other people want of me versus
Hmm.
like actually feeling that way. And like I think that's where like the relief and the freedom of realizing that like I don't have to work with the Abrahamic pantheon has done wonders for just my whole journey in general. It's like that one realization was like, oh, and then the door got blown off. I
Hmm.
was like, okay, this feels more comfortable. This is definitely where I want to be and how I want to be doing it. But yeah, I don't think there was any like one resource. It was just the community of the Discord and like, because admittedly, I have listened to very little of the podcast and I haven't transcribed.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
Honestly, fair enough. Because I feel like you and I are close enough at this point that if you're listening to me talk for fun, it's like,
it's like I could just call you for that.
yeah, literally, you hear me talk for fun enough. I like the voice memos where I'm like screaming at you. You get enough of that.
Yeah,
It's
no, but
personalized.
like, yeah, and like I think, but like it was the realization that like ultimately what you're offering with the podcast doesn't necessarily apply
Yeah.
to. And like coming to that realization of like, yeah, I still have a lot of like mentalities and like viewpoints that need like dealing with, but ultimately like being able to step outside that box of like, you know, this is what needs to be done, how it's
Hmm.
supposed to be has helped so much with just being able to accept where I am now.
Yeah. I also think at like some point you can very much believe in Christian values, like, being kind to people, giving to people, like helping your neighbor, like those like the legit like Christian values that Jesus talks about, kind of Christian values, and not believe in, the Abrahamic pantheon. I feel like that's where like my husband is, where he believes in the principles, he believes in the foundation, but he doesn't believe, like I was explaining to him the story of Adam and Eve last night, and he's like, what kind of crack was somebody on who wrote this? I'm like, Jack, I don't know, maybe a little bit, but
I think that a lot of creation stories are like who came up with like
they're
where
crazy.
what were they on, you know?
Yeah.
Because you figure the Norse creation story is like Ymir already existed. Like the frost giants already existed somehow.
Hmm.
And Odin, Vili, and Villa, I think, is the second one. Because it's the two V's and then there's Odin. And I'm like, single child twins. But oddly
Yeah.
enough, they never get mentioned again. His siblings never get mentioned, or his brothers, I think they are. They never get mentioned again. That as far as I know. So there are some stories where it's just Odin, but essentially they kill Ymir and use his bones, his blood, his body to create the world. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, no, listen, nobody's got room to judge Adam and Eve anymore because
It's
they seem tame.
wild. Um, and then from that, there's the first humans, and they're
Hmm.
given the breath of life from Odin, and that's why he's called the Allfather, is because he's essentially the one who gave life to,
Yeah.
humanity. Um, so like, they're all a little
They're all a
out
little
of the
crazy. I do love the imagery though of like, and then this is like in Norse creationism and like obviously in Christian creationism where like the God gives the breath to the of life to the human. I
Yeah.
love that imagery so much. I
Yes.
feel like it's so woo, but in like the best way.
Oh, no, completely. Like, and I definitely need to get more into like Norse mythology and like how all of that works, but like I've had enough going on, you know?
Yeah.
So
It's
I
you know
haven't,
what life is we it's a journey. You don't got to get to the destination all at once.
no.
Get there eventually.
Um, yeah, no, basically, which is kind of what I'm telling myself with my poetry YouTube, which I told Odin I do. Um, we're getting there. It's just,
YouTube's also scary, okay?
and like my thing is that like, especially now, I don't have someplace I can record videos for YouTube to be nice. So
Yeah,
I'm like waiting on that, so to
that's a mood.
speak. Yeah. But, Odin puts me to work in other ways with creativity. He's like, fine, we'll do other things, which is fine, Which that reminds me that I have to put a backing on his tapestry.
Oh yeah, that big ass thing that you were
Hmm.
making.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to
Yeah.
put a backing on it so that I can do something with it.
All the I was gonna say Charlie knits, but you don't knit, you crochet.
Yes.
I learned this on live one time because I was like, Charlie knitted this for me, and somebody's like, no, that's not knit. That's
No.
clearly not knit. What
No.
the fuck do you mean? They're different. That was the time I actually learned that they're two different things.
Oh
I
yeah.
thought that crocheting was just another word for knit.
No.
Sometimes I really wonder about myself, you know? I'm sure poor Charlie does too. Anyway, do you have any final advice for people who are like deconstructing or starting on this path?
Definitely, and I mean, I feel like this is kind of the overarching thing with anything is that, the idea of take what resonates, leave what doesn't, because that is so important. And like looking back, if I had had that mentality much earlier in life, I don't think I'd have gone back to Christianity as many times as I tried to, because it didn't resonate. It
Yeah.
really did not, and I didn't see that. Like I was just so determined to, be and believe these things that I was given, and it just did not work, and just give yourself a lot of grace because that is so important, and like your views are going to change.
Hmm.
You know, you may walk away from something that you held on to so firmly that you didn't realize what you were missing because you were holding on to it. And, the mentality of you're not alone. Find a community, hopefully, we want to say, join our Discord, you know, and like, please do it if that's what calls to you. But at the same time, find a community of people who can help you, who believe what you do, and hold on to that loosely. You know, I think there's a point of like, you do realize if you don't belong in a space, you don't belong in a space.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And I think a lot of
And you could
people
always like
struggle with that.
belong in a space for a little bit of time and then not belong there anymore. And it's not like because like the space has changed or anything. It's because you as a person have changed and you've grown and your beliefs have grown. So it's time for you to move on.
Yeah, no,
So like,
exactly.
yeah, we've seen that a few times with like
Oh,
people
yeah.
in church that have like come in and they've been active for a really long time and then they'll like leave because they're like, I don't really believe this anymore. I'm gonna go do something
Yeah.
else. And it's like, cool, have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
Good luck.
and I think sometimes people don't realize that of
Mm-mm.
like, you can,
You're allowed to grow as a person. Like
you're
nobody
allowed
gets
to get
offended
up
by
from the
that.
table.
Yeah. And if people get offended by that, then they're not like your people. I don't like say goodbye, good luck. That's like sarcastic. It's like, no, legit, do what works for you. Like,
Yeah.
you know.
You know, and, I think sometimes people, the idea of you're allowed to get up from the table, you know, because I think a lot of people don't realize because of the way Christianity is and the You have to be here and do this and do this and do this mentality that is in these churches where if you're not here, you don't exist to some of these people. And that sucks. That is a hard mentality to hold on to. But a lot of people do it because it's what they know. And I think people don't realize that, like, yeah, it's okay to be like, I don't belong here anymore. Or even to say, I don't resonate with these beliefs. I don't have to hold them. Because I think a lot of us do that too. And that's a big part of deconstruction is realizing what you're still holding on to that you shouldn't be. And community is really good at helping you realize that, whether like it's them physically telling you, hey, you don't have to believe this, you don't have to think this way, or just seeing other people drop it makes you realize, oh, why am I still holding on to this? Um, but yeah, definitely, and just do your research. And for me, that's a lot of deep diving Google, and finding resources and finding, and I do this for other people in the church. They'll see it sometimes, if somebody asks a question, I will go find that answer because a lot of the times what you're looking for is not going to be a simple question plugged into Google. You're going to have to take one result and go, okay, so that's what this is. Plug this secondary question into Google and follow that lead, and then so on and so forth. And some people don't realize that that's how you do that kind of research. And then some people just don't have the time, or they would rather somebody else do it for them, and that's okay. I think that's what community's for, and in to help people and have that you know ability to be like, I don't know the answer to this. Does somebody else have it?
But yeah, no, I like agree with you in the sense that like community is really important and like finding places that you can get your questions answered and also like doing the research to answer them for yourself, because ultimately like somebody could find an answer for you and like, you could listen to like a podcast about a certain thing and like not really agree with it. Obviously, if it's facts, it's facts. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
you can't argue with that.
but
But at the end of the day,
given what we're talking about,
yeah.
facts are a little
I think the only like
debatable.
facts are like the lore that like, like certain like what I'm saying, like creationism stories. Like just like as an example there, like it clearly states in the Bible how it happened. You
Yeah.
can't say that in the Bible it happened a different way because in the Bible it happened this way.
Yes.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like that's what I mean by like facts. Like these are well established belief systems. We're not gonna like say that, we're not gonna try to make a new Adam and Eve story here. That's not our goal. But my point being when it comes to like opinion and like faith-based things and like feelings, like
Yeah.
you need to like Charlie says, you need to take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and kind of figure out for yourself what you're actually going to believe and what you're not.
Yeah, for sure. And that even with, going outside of Christianity, with creation stories from other pantheons and lores, you do have to look at multiple sources and kind of find what vibes, because there are thousands of stories that are all minutely different. And, like my friend and I were talking about Dionysus and how he has so many different versions of his stories. And, there are certain things that, yeah, this is what everyone believes, but within those stories, there's there's changes, and like you can get he has like three or four different like how he came to be stories basically, and it's just like, okay, you kind of have to you know go through it and be like, this is the part of this god or this deity that I am connecting with, and go from there. And it will take research, and but and again, a lot of that is feeling too, of realizing that, what you're getting and the vibes and the feelings that you get, what does that mesh with in terms of what you found out, So definitely do your research, be open to new ideas and new takes on the same thing. Um, or not new, but different takes on the same thing. And, ultimately, take what works, leave what doesn't, but do so respectfully. Because I think that's where some people miss the mark, is they kind of say, okay, that doesn't work for me, so it has to be wrong. Or I don't mesh with this, so that just doesn't exist. It's like, no, you know, and this is something that I got from somebody else. Of It's the idea of, you know, if you're going to believe in a deity or a set of deities that have been alive for thousands of years, since the beginning of time or whatever, those stories took place in a certain time, and you have to acknowledge that they happened somehow or some way, but who that deed, like that is on that deity, how they come away from that is on them. And I think the big one I saw was Hades and Persephone, of like their story gets romanticized
Yeah,
so much, but it it
it's
wasn't.
not.
He
There's literally nowhere in any like ancient Greek artifacts or like writings or anything that suggests this was a romantic and willing marriage.
situation. No.
Like I understand like now, like they've been together for a really long time and
Yeah, they've
probably a different story and
and
Persephone.
worked past all of that,
Yeah,
but it did
but
happen.
it did happen.
It makes for good fiction, but not so much for good
Mhm.
following.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing, is you have to realize what has been romanticized. How did it actually, quote unquote, how did it actually happen?
Mhm.
Especially with Greek and Norse and stuff, there's questionable
Oh
because
yeah,
of
there's like a lot
the
of
oral
romantic.
tradition.
Yeah, like Medusa's whole story. That was
Yes.
not how Medusa came to be, but I feel like it's recognized now in modern mythology, just like Lilith's modern mythology, because it's very empowering and a lot of people resonate with
Yeah.
it. However, there's a difference.
Yeah. And like going off of Medusa's thing, because I'm fascinated with the story and I don't know all of it, but there is the take that what happened to her wasn't fully a punishment, because
Hmm.
there is a version of the story where she is a follower of Athena and she's assaulted in the temple. And Athena can only do so much because it was a follower of Poseidon. She can't and it was in her temple, so she has to do something. And ultimately, I like that telling of it, but I don't know enough of that story to
Yeah.
say
That's
that's what
pretty
it
much
actually
where like
is.
the modern lore was
Yeah,
derivative from,
yeah,
which makes sense.
yeah. But it's a concept of, I do think there are figures in this and deities that got mistreated, and the new telling of their mythology is a better representation. And I think Loki is another good example of that.
Hmm.
Loki has been villainized so often. He is they are a person protecting their children who has been betrayed by their blood brother because he chose to attack his children, chain them up, you know. I mean, I'd be pretty pissed too. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
real honest. Like, if I was Loki. And like, yes, he is a trickster, and they are the kind of deity who can cause problems, but so does Zeus every other day, like, you
I
know,
mean, like, let's be so for real. The Abrahamic God let the adversary fuck with Job for fun.
yeah.
So, like,
Mhm.
does that make the Abrahamic God any better?
I
Like,
mean, the Abrahamic God basically said, screw everyone, except for this select group of people, I'm starting
yeah,
over.
he like
Um,
fucking he committed genocide on the
yeah,
whole world.
yeah. And I'm like,
Still
okay.
love him though. Still love him though. So he and I so cool. I
But
can call out the bullshit a little bit.
no, but like it's that same thing of like all of these deities have things that they've done that
Yeah.
aren't great.
No, it's yeah. I love when the Abraham and God gets singled out for that because it's like, you pagans, think about who you worship in their lore. Nobody's better.
No,
Like,
no, not at all. I mean, and like, and that is, but and again, I think that's something that people have that disrespectful mentality of.
yeah,
And like, I'm no better. There are certain sects and branches of Christianity and Christianity as a whole that I
yeah. You know
judge
what?
harder than others.
It's
Um,
trauma. You
yeah,
know, that's what a lot of it's rooted in.
yeah,
So
and just and like some of it is just like not knowing where a lot of that comes from, and like it's an internalized belief that comes from how the fact none of the like sects of Christianity actually get along.
yeah,
And
yeah. I find that to be like real interesting. Like
yeah,
you're literally a religion that's main deity, Jesus, is love your neighbor. And
they can't even love each
evangelicals are like,
other.
fuck the Catholics. The Catholics are like, the evangelicals are crazy. The Protestants hate that like,
Yeah.
how is this any sort of like what Jesus wanted for the
Like the words in red are pretty clear. Everything else might be a little wonky, but the words in red are pretty clear.
yeah.
And still we have these problems. That's human nature though. I will say that is a lot of human nature and kind of and I think where other people kind of romanticize other like the pagan pantheons. Christians don't necessarily romanticize, but weaponize
Yeah.
what they view and how they view it. And it's like,
You don't see any other denomination of like, or not denomination, any other religion for the most part. Like, I could be totally wrong, but like, I personally have not seen another religion that evangelizes and tries to get members as much as I've seen Christians. Jews do not do that. That's like
no,
literally against Jewish tradition.
yeah.
Muslim people, I have never heard of Muslim people doing like that kind of outreach. I know that there's like a lot of prison programs with Muslim people, but that's like
But that's,
about it. I
and
think
like, I
it's
think,
so
but
different.
there's a lot of your big three religions, except for, I don't know about Judaism, but Christianity and Islam are very much in the prison system.
Yeah. Judaism does not evangelize at all.
No,
So they're not big
there's,
in like the
if you
prison.
want to, well, because like it requires conversion. Like
It
there's
could
a whole
it
process.
requires conversion. It's months of conversion.
Yeah.
It's you have to pay specific dues. Like you literally have to buy into this like religion because they need to know that you're serious. And
Yeah.
if you think about it, like Jews have been so oppressed so many times throughout history that it
Hmm.
makes so much fucking sense that they vet people
Yeah.
hardcore to get into their religion.
Yeah.
Like then you have to do a mikvah. You if you're a guy and you're uncircumcised, even as an adult, you got to go get circumcised. Which
Yeah.
like, oh God,
Yeah. No, but
no.
and like and that's kind of like this thing of like and there's the whole stereotype of Islamic terrorism. But at the same time, Christians are just as there's a
No.
whole like
Christians are
there's a
homegrown terrorists. Like, let's be so fucking
well
for real.
that but like there's a history and a half of Christians and Christianity spilling blood for their
Mm-hmm.
religion.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Religion was started because a dude died. Like, think about it.
yeah, like you've got a martyr story. Like it starts with a martyr, but like, how are we here now?
Yeah. Like that's like literally the point there. It goes, I like that point though, that like everybody's the same. We are all people.
Yeah,
We all suck,
yeah, no,
you know?
seriously. And it takes a lot of different deconstruction, I think, to realize where you have your faults
Hmm.
and where your views and how you view them are very not great.
Yeah. I think that's applicable to so much more than just religion.
Oh, it is for
Yeah.
sure.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. So I think that's a good place to end with everybody fucking sucks.
I mean, if they haven't met us already, I don't know what to tell them. I'm sorry if
I
you're
don't
just
know,
now
man.
listening in on this. Just wish me like because we're recording this way early, but this will go up the day before my birthday. So,
Happy birthday, Charlie. Look, I said it first in
you did.
July.
Yep.
I didn't even
And
get the
then other people will hear it in August, and then it'll go up the first Monday in September on for everyone else.
streamings. Yeah.
Yeah.
So besides the church, is there any social medias that we're shouting out for you?
Um, so I have my main Instagram, which is Catman's Bubble. That's spelled with a K and two T's. Like Batman, but again with a K and an extra T.
Yeah.
Bubble. It's all one word. Uh, then there's Witchy Charlie Moon, which is my witchy Instagram. I haven't done a whole lot there. I will eventually. It's just a whole process. I don't know if I mean, I think the only other place you can find me on the internet actively would be Twitch. And sort of maybe going to start streaming there. Watch. We'll see this, and
We'll see how it goes.
yeah. But that's under if you know my Discord URL, it's the same. It's Dark Master Cat. Because I've just
I'm not gonna talk about I still think it's Dank Master Cat, okay? Like
I'm sorry, I'm
fucking
not a stoner.
years. And I knew that about you too, but I still thought it was Dank Master Cat. Because I'm that much of a stoner. Anyway.
But yeah, that's Dark Master Cat at Twitch. It's twitch.tv/Dark Master Cat. I'm hoping to do a lot more streaming there as I kind of figure out my work life and you know what I can do
Yes.
in that regard.
Yeah. Alrighty then.
So yeah, that's me.
That's that. All right then. Thank you, Charlie, for being on
Yeah,
the
thanks for
podcast.
having me, for
Um,
sure.
yeah. All right. I'm gonna end this now.